As the AI bubble continues to inflate through billions of dollars of investment and seemingly endless, baseless promises of huge potential, people are starting to realize just how catastrophic this could be for the economy.
Some level, when something gets sufficiently huge, whether or not they are on paper, the federal government is kind of the insurer of last resort, as we've seen in various financial crises and insurance companies screwing things up.
Just this morning, the Wall Street Journal reported a significant drop in the U.S. stock market with the headline AI bubble fears hit stocks. Now, this also contrasts with what we've been hearing from the Trump administration, that the economy in general is thriving. And he's been saying that the economy is booming, but it's only 7 tech companies that are booming: Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and Meta. And they're driving this growth in just one sector, AI. So the entire U.S. economy growth can be tracked down to 7 companies and their AI growth specifically. At least 40% of economic growth this year is attributed to these companies alone, and 80% of stock gains this year came from AI companies. But people are justifying these levels of investment because of the promises that the CEOs make that there will be a return on that investment. So for a company like OpenAI, their value is based on the expectation that they're going to figure out how to make a profit out of it. And they haven't. And so generating this increased human dependency that can be mined, because it's not subject to HIPAA. Is that correct, Dr. King?
Right, it's not subject to HIPAA.
It's not subject to HIPAA. So people's deepest fears, secrets, emotional content, relationships can all be mined for this empty promise that we're getting from these companies to turn a profit. And the reason I bring all of this up is because the exposure of this industry and this investment, I fear, has reached broad levels potentially of the American economy. When we're talking about 40% of stock growth in the United States being attributed to these companies in the AI sector alone, and that sector has not turned a profit, we're talking about a massive economic bubble. And when we've seen, depending on the exposure of that bubble, we could see 2008-style threats to economic stability. And that pressure is reflected on the extreme lengths that these companies are going to allow unethical human interactions with these chatbots. I say this because I want to say also on the record that should this bubble pop, and I say this for my colleagues here, should this bubble pop, my colleague from Massachusetts mentioned the level of AI lobbying that occurs here in Congress. Should this bubble pop, we should not be entertaining a bailout. We should not entertain a bailout of these corporations as healthcare is being denied to everyday Americans, as SNAP and food assistance is being denied to everyday Americans, precipitating some of the very mental crises that people are turning to AI chatbots to try to resolve in themselves. So I think it's very important that we get on the record and state that. And I'd like to thank the witnesses for offering their insight today. Thank you.
OpenAI CEO Sam Altman writing a lengthy post on X yesterday saying the company, quote, does not have or want government guarantees for OpenAI data centers. The move came after earlier comments from CFO Sarah Friar in the week about the federal government backstopping the AI infrastructure build-out. Friar later, though, clarified her comments on LinkedIn, saying OpenAI was not looking for a backstop, but she wanted to make the point that America's tech strength will come from the government and private sector working together. This latest talk around OpenAI's ability to fund its investments all started on our Next Guest podcast. Here with me now in a CNBC exclusive is Altimeter founder and CEO Brad Gerstner, the fire starter. Welcome. It's good to have you here.
It's great to be here.
So first we should just lay the groundwork. You have been an early investor in OpenAI.
Correct.
You're one of the biggest funds in OpenAI, substantial investment there. You had Sam Altman on the podcast this week, and you asked him, I think, the main question, which is you're investing $1.4 trillion on revenues of $13 billion, and he got very defensive. And I think a lot of people are reading into that thinking, uh-oh,
right.
Why did he react that way?
And I think that's the story, right? Why are people reading so much into this? And I think we got to step back for a second. The NASDAQ's gone up 40% off of the bottom in April, right? Straight up and to the right. All these AI stocks have gone up to the right. The market was kind of looking for a reason for a breather. And, Sam came on the podcast. He was a little bit feisty. And he said, listen, we're doing more than $13 billion in revenue. And he just said in his tweet that they're going to exit the year at $20 billion in revenue.
It's still a fraction of what they're spending.
Correct. And, as I clarified in my tweet after the fact, when I said, it's unfortunate everybody focused on the feistiness and not on the substance. What Sam said multiple times on the pod and since is that he expects that they'll do over $100 billion in revenues in 27 or 28.
Maybe the government's already sometimes doing a form of socialism, but for wealthy interests. And should we just be more real about that?
Lena, this is it. Now we've got the rubber meets the road, because the corporations are people, but they are people that use public resources. They benefit from our water, from our energy, from our stability, from our labor. And yet those things are not compensated for, and taxing them is then seen as their get out of jail free card. If you tax us, we will flee. But we don't ever have to acknowledge the amount of benefit that we get from the public infrastructure that has been built by tax dollars that is not ours, that is the people's, not the corporations. And when you start from that premise, doesn't this whole thing look a little bit different?
I think so. And what was so interesting was even the ways that we do government shutdowns. What areas of service get shut down and what areas of service are still provided is really interesting. And just to give you a small example, at the Federal Trade Commission, when the government shut down, they shut down the basic hotlines where people could report fraud, where people could report identity theft. What stayed open was the place that Wall Street could report their mergers and keep those mergers still going.
Priorities, Lena.
It's a tale as old as time. Huge corporations making promises they can't deliver on so that they can benefit in the short term, and then expecting a government bailout when it all hits the fan. Now, we do have Senator Elizabeth Warren, who's raising the alarm about Trump's potential plans to prop up OpenAI and other AI companies with taxpayer money. The administration has close ties not only with executives of those AI companies, but with donors as well. And it seems almost certain that if Trump is willing to bail out his friend, President Milei of Argentina, he'd be more than willing to bail out his friends here in the United States. AI companies have been selling the lie that AI can replace the human workforce, when in reality, an MIT study found that 95% of attempts to incorporate generative AI into businesses are failing. And you can see it! Things just don't work as well now that fewer people are actually working. As sci-fi writer and tech journalist Cory Doctorow says, AI cannot do your job, but an AI salesman can 100% convince your boss to fire you and replace you with an AI that can't do your job. A third of our total economy is now propped up on that lie. Corporate socialism will always privatize the profits while nationalizing the losses, and it might finally be time to see whether too big to fail is a lie. If the government has money to bail out the corporations, it has plenty of money to help Americans weather the storm.